The person who disrespects you is not always trying to hurt you. Sometimes they are testing how easily they can control you. Your reaction gives them the answer. And you cannot stop people from being rude. You cannot control whether someone appreciates you, misunderstands you, criticizes you, or deliberately tries to provoke you. But there is one thing they cannot take unless you give it away: control over your response. Most people think strength means having the perfect comeback. Stoicism teaches something far more powerful. Strength is being able to feel the anger without becoming the anger, recognize the disrespect without losing your dignity, and respond in a way that protects your peace instead of feeding the conflict. Because once you master that disrespect stops being a weakness someone can exploit and becomes a moment where you demonstrate exactly who you are. The moment someone disrespects you, there is a small window between what they do and what you do next. Most people lose themselves inside that window. One insult becomes an argument, one sarcastic comment becomes a war, one cold message becomes hours of overthinking. One person's attempt to provoke you suddenly controls your entire day. But what if the person who disrespected you never had the power you thought they had? What if the real battle was never about their words, but about whether you would surrender control of your mind to them? Imagine someone speaking to you in a way you know you do not deserve. Maybe it happens at work. Someone takes credit for your effort, talks down to you in front of others, or deliberately tries to make you look incompetent. Maybe it happens in a relationship. Someone knows exactly which words hurt you and uses them when they are angry. Maybe it happens in your own family, where an old pattern keeps repeating because everyone already knows which buttons to push. And suddenly you feel that familiar heat inside your chest. Your mind starts preparing a response before the other person has even finished speaking. You want them to know they crossed a line. You want them to understand that you are not weak. You want to defend yourself, explain yourself, prove yourself, and make them regret what they said. And that is precisely where they gain control. Because when someone can press a button and immediately determine your emotional state, they have discovered something valuable about you. They have discovered that your peace is available for them to disturb. This does not mean you should tolerate disrespect. It does not mean becoming passive, silent, or allowing people to walk over you. There is a huge difference between emotional control and weakness. A controlled person can say no. A controlled person can leave. A controlled person can establish a boundary, confront bad behavior, or end a relationship. The difference is that they do not need anger to give their actions strength. That is the reaction you need to master. Pause before you give the other person your power. Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not simply by events, but by the judgments we make about those events. Someone says something insulting. That is an external event. Your mind immediately says, "How dare they speak to me like that? I need to destroy them. Everyone must know I am right." That interpretation creates the emotional storm. The insult happened once. You can replay it 50 times. Think about how often this happens. Someone sends you a disrespectful text. You read it, become angry, put your phone down, pick it up again, reread the message. Imagine what you should have said, type a response, delete it, rewrite it, and finally send something you regret. Hours later, the other person has moved on with their life, while you are still fighting a battle inside your head. Who is carrying the punishment? They insulted you for 10 seconds. You gave the insult 3 hours. This is why mastering your reaction is so powerful. You are not trying to control other people. You are taking back control of the part of the situation that actually belongs to you. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly returned to the idea that your mind is your own domain. He faced criticism, political pressure, betrayal, war, illness, and people who wanted things from him. Yet his philosophy was not built around controlling the world. It was built around governing himself while living inside an uncontrollable world. Media. That principle becomes incredibly practical when someone disrespects you. Suppose your boss criticizes you unfairly in front of your coworkers. Your first instinct might be to interrupt, defend every detail, and expose their mistakes in return. But imagine instead that you remain calm. You listen. You do not accept false accusations, but you refuse to become emotionally chaotic. Later, when the moment is calmer, you say, "I'm willing to discuss the issue, but I'd like us to keep the conversation respectful." And that sentence carries more strength than an angry speech. Why? Because you are no longer fighting for emotional victory. You are protecting your dignity. There is something psychologically powerful about a person who cannot easily be provoked. People who depend on emotional reactions often become confused when the reaction disappears. They expected anger. You gave them composure. They expected an argument. You gave them a boundary. They expected you to explain yourself for 20 minutes. You gave them one clear sentence and walked away. That is not weakness. That is emotional discipline. Think about a relationship where someone constantly criticizes you. At first, you explain yourself. Then you defend yourself. Then you become frustrated because nothing changes. Eventually, you realize you have been trying to convince someone to respect you. That is a losing game. Respect cannot always be argued into existence. Sometimes it has to be required through your behavior. You do not need to scream, "Respect me." You demonstrate what access to you looks like. If someone repeatedly speaks to you with contempt, you can reduce your engagement. If someone continually manipulates your emotions, you can stop participating in the cycle. If someone insults you whenever they are angry, you can calmly make it clear that the conversation ends when disrespect begins. You are not punishing them. You are choosing what you will participate in. This is where many people misunderstand Stoicism. They think being Stoic means becoming emotionless. It does not. A Stoic can feel anger, disappointment, sadness, and frustration. The goal is not to become a stone. The goal is to stop your emotions from becoming your master. You can feel anger without becoming cruel. You can feel hurt without begging. You can feel disappointed without becoming bitter. You can feel disrespected without losing your dignity. That distinction changes everything. Seneca wrote extensively about anger because he understood how quickly anger can transform a person. Anger often feels like power because it creates energy. Your heart beats faster, your thoughts become sharper, your body prepares for confrontation. But energy is not the same thing as strength. A wildfire has energy. That does not mean it has control. Real strength is being able to use your energy deliberately. Imagine someone cutting you off in traffic and then making an insulting gesture. The ordinary reaction is immediate. You become angry. You follow them with your eyes. Maybe you speed up. Maybe you start imagining an argument. But what has actually happened? You lost control of your emotional state because a stranger made a gesture from inside another vehicle. That stranger does not know you. They do not know your goals. They do not know what you have been through, and yet, for a few moments, they controlled your attention. The mature response is not pretending you are unaffected. The mature response is realizing that the incident is not important, enough to purchase your peace. This same principle becomes even more important with people you love. A stranger's insult may annoy you for 10 minutes. A loved one's disrespect can stay in your mind for days because their opinion matters to you. You replay the conversation while lying in bed. You wonder whether they meant it. You think about what you should have said. You question the entire relationship. Betty, this is where emotional control requires something deeper than simply staying quiet. You need to separate the person's behavior from your identity. Someone's criticism does not automatically define you. PLD. Someone's rejection does not determine your worth. Someone's inability to appreciate you does not prove that you are unworthy of appreciation. And someone's disrespect does not require you to disrespect yourself in response. MBNDE. Ask yourself, why does this person's opinion have so much authority over my emotional state? MADS. Maybe because you wanted their approval. Maybe because you wanted them to recognize your effort. Maybe because you believed being respected by them would finally prove something about yourself. But your self-respect cannot depend entirely on another person's behavior. If it does, you have handed them the keys. This is why the most important reaction is often not what you say to the disrespectful person. It is what you say to yourself immediately afterward, instead of, how could they do this to me? Ask, what is the wisest response available to me now? Instead of, I need to make them understand, ask, do I actually need their understanding? Instead of, I have to win this argument, ask, what outcome protects my dignity? Those questions create distance between emotion and action, and inside that distance is freedom. There will be moments when you should speak. There will be moments when silence would actually allow harmful behavior to continue. Emotional control does not mean avoiding confrontation. Sometimes the most stoic response is a direct one. To Amelia, you might say, I'm willing to have this conversation, but I will not continue while you speak to me that way. No insult, no threat, no performance, just a boundary. And if they continue, you follow through. This is where your actions become more powerful than your words. Anyone can announce a boundary. The difficult part is respecting your own boundary when the other person tests it. Suppose someone repeatedly disrespects you, then suddenly becomes nice when they want something. If you always forget the past because you are afraid of conflict, the pattern continues. But if you calmly change your availability, the dynamic changes. You stop rewarding behavior that damages your peace. This is not revenge. Revenge keeps you emotionally connected to the person. You spend your energy hoping they suffer. Detachment is different. Detachment says, I no longer need you to become a different person for me to protect myself. That is an enormous psychological shift. You stop waiting for the apology. You stop checking whether they regret it. You stop imagining the perfect comeback. You stop needing the other person to finally admit that you were right. You simply decide what you will do next. That is freedom. And there is another level to this. Sometimes the person disrespecting you is not another person. Sometimes it is you. Every time you abandon your own values to gain approval, you disrespect yourself. Every time you say yes when you mean no, because you are afraid someone will leave, you teach yourself that your boundaries are negotiable. Every time you betray your own principles just to avoid being disliked, something inside you becomes weaker. Self-respect is built through small decisions. You keep the promise you made to yourself. You stop chasing people who repeatedly make you feel unwanted. You speak honestly without needing everyone to agree. You accept criticism without automatically accepting humiliation. You leave situations that consistently destroy your peace. And you learn to sit alone without interpreting loneliness as failure. The more secure you become within yourself, the less desperate you become to control how other people perceive you. This is why emotional control can make you almost impossible to manipulate. A manipulator needs an emotional opening. They need you desperate for approval, desperate for an explanation, desperate to be understood, desperate to prove yourself, or desperate to avoid abandonment. When you stop needing those things from the wrong people, their influence shrinks. They can still speak, they can still criticize, they can still misunderstand you, but they cannot easily move you. That is what it means to become difficult to disturb, not because life stops being painful. Not because people suddenly become respectful, but because your internal center becomes harder to reach. Imagine waking up tomorrow with this mindset: I will not give every person access to my nervous system. I will decide what deserves my attention. Think about how different your day would feel. Someone sends a rude message. You pause. Someone criticizes you. You listen for what is useful and discard what is malicious. Someone rejects you. You feel the disappointment, but you do not chase them. Someone tries to provoke you. You do not perform for them. Someone walks away. You let them walk. Someone misunderstands you. You explain yourself when necessary, but you do not spend your entire life trying to control their opinion. That is a quieter form of power, and eventually something unexpected happens. You stop fearing disrespect as much. Not because you enjoy being disrespected, but because you trust yourself to handle it. You know you can leave. You know you can speak. You know you can remain calm. You know you can survive rejection. You know you can rebuild after betrayal. You know that even if someone refuses to recognize your value, you do not have to participate in their judgment of you. That confidence changes the way you enter relationships, workplaces, friendships, and difficult conversations. And you no longer walk into every interaction asking, will they approve of me? You begin asking, does this interaction deserve access to me? That is a completely different position. The strongest person in the room is not always the loudest person. Sometimes it is the person who hears the insult, feels the anger rise, takes one breath, and chooses not to become someone they will regret being. That one breath can change the direction of a conversation, that one pause can save a relationship. That one boundary can end a toxic pattern, that one decision can restore your self-respect. And perhaps most importantly, that one moment can remind you that your emotions belong to you. So the next time someone disrespects you, do not rush to prove your strength. Pause, notice what you are feeling. Ask what is actually within your control, then choose the response that your future self will respect. Maybe that response is silence. Maybe it is a boundary. Maybe it is leaving. Maybe it is a calm conversation. Maybe it is forgiveness without renewed access. The point is not to find one reaction that works for every situation. The point is to stop reacting automatically, because automatic reactions make you predictable, self-command makes you free. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that other people may behave badly, but he still had a choice about the kind of person he would be. That lesson remains powerful today, because you will never control every person who enters your life. You cannot control their maturity, their insecurities, their jealousy, their anger, their intentions, or their opinion of you. But you can control whether their behavior turns you into someone you do not recognize, so protect that choice. Yes. And if someone disrespects you, do not hand them your character as well. Let them reveal who they are. T-end, you focus on revealing who you are. Bend. If this message gave you a different way to look at disrespect, emotional control, and self-respect, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Daily Stoic Dose. Keep learning, keep sharpening your mind, and keep building the kind of inner strength that does not disappear when someone else behaves badly. Because eventually you reach a point where disrespect no longer automatically creates a reaction. It creates a decision, and that is when you become dangerous to manipulation, difficult to provoke, and deeply difficult to control. Lained, you do not need to win every argument. You do not need the last word. Plende, you do not need everyone to understand you. You only need to remain loyal to the person you are trying to become. Ben, dear, let other people lose control of themselves. You do not have to join them. Your calm is not surrender. Your silence is not weakness. Your boundary is not cruelty. And your ability to walk away without hatred is not defeat. It is mastery.